It was a bright Monday morning in Washington, D.C., but the political temperature had just hit boiling point. Cable news anchors were breathless. "This is unprecedented," barked one. "We've never seen anything like it." Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana, known for his sharp wit and Southern charm, had just filed an $80 million defamation lawsuit against Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, or AOC, as the world knew her. The suit alleged that AOC had, in a nationally televised town hall, accused Senator Kennedy of engaging in systemic financial corruption, funneling government contracts to close friends and lobbyists under the guise of hurricane relief funds in the Gulf South. But that wasn't all. AOC had followed up her remarks with a damning thread on X, formerly Twitter, attaching a 6-minute video montage of Kennedy's speeches, layered with ominous music and overlaid text that read, "From flood relief to campaign grease." It had gone viral. Kennedy's office, stunned by the ferocity of the public reaction and the headlines branding him as a Bayou bandit, responded within 24 hours with a legal counterstrike. The senator claimed emotional distress, reputational harm, and malicious intent and demanded $80 million in damages, $10 million for each of the 8 statements AOC had made that he claimed were provably false. The lawsuit made headlines from the New York Times to Fox News. Senator Kennedy appeared on Hannity, drawling with signature sarcasm, "Bless her little socialist heart, but Ms. Ocasio-Cortez is about to find out that libel laws still exist in America even under her Green New Deal." Inside the halls of Congress, whispers turned into roars. Republicans rallied behind Kennedy, treating the lawsuit like a moral stand against what they labeled unchecked leftist slander. MAGA hats were back in fashion. Trump, now the sitting president again, tweeted, "John Kennedy is a great American patriot. He's got courage. OC should be ashamed. She's a nasty lightweight." At the same time, Democrats circled the wagons around AOC. She responded with a 3-minute Instagram video, calm but fiery, where she said, "If speaking truth to power is a crime, then file your lawsuits, folks. I will not be bullied into silence. Not by a man who spent more time in corporate backrooms than in flood zones." The video exploded. Within hours, #IStandWithAOC was trending nationwide. But behind the scenes, even AOC's team was in crisis mode. Kennedy's legal team had filed in the District Court of Columbia, a strategic move to get the case in front of a federal judge rumored to be sympathetic to First Amendment interpretation, but with a conservative lean. The lawsuit wasn't just bluster. It was real and dangerous. Legal analysts broke down the case hour by hour. Conservative voices claimed this could finally shut down the left's smear machine. Liberal commentators warned that this could set a precedent, weaponizing defamation laws to silence political dissent. Meanwhile, AOC was scheduled to appear on Face the Nation that Sunday. The entire country was watching. And what she said next would stun everyone, including Kennedy himself. Sunday morning came like a storm warning. Face the Nation had promoted the interview all week. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez would go live to address the $80 million lawsuit brought against her by Senator John Kennedy. Ratings were already through the roof before the opening credits even rolled. Host Margaret Brennan opened the segment with her usual calm but urgent tone. "Congresswoman, thank you for being here. You're currently facing a lawsuit filed by Senator John Kennedy accusing you of defamation to the tune of $80 million. Do you regret anything you said?" AOC didn't flinch. Wearing a navy blue blazer, she leaned forward, hands clasped. "Margaret, I regret that our political system allows elected officials to use lawsuits as weapons to suppress uncomfortable truths. What I said was backed by data, video, public records. The people of Louisiana deserve transparency, not threats." Brennan followed up quickly, "But he claims your accusations are false. That you defamed him." AOC paused, then reached into her purse. She pulled out a thick folder and handed it to Brennan on live TV. "These are internal FEMA emails obtained via FOIA. They show how Kennedy's office recommended specific contractors, companies with direct ties to his campaign donors, to handle flood relief logistics after Hurricane Ida. These aren't accusations. They're receipts." Gasps. Murmurs. It was an absolute TV bombshell. Brennan, visibly taken aback, flipped through the first few pages. AOC continued, "I'm not the one who should be sued. I'm the one exposing what's been hidden. If this lawsuit goes forward, I will countersue and subpoena every donor, every PAC, every contractor involved in this shady network. Social media erupted. Within minutes, the interview clip had tens of millions of views. Journalists began fact-checking the FEMA emails. Several prominent watchdog groups confirmed the documents looked authentic. Kennedy's office quickly issued a press release calling AOC's move theatrical and claiming the documents had been selectively edited and taken out of context. But the damage had been done. On Capitol Hill, the power dynamics began to shift. AOC, once seen by some moderates as an impulsive firebrand, was now being hailed as a strategic crusader. Even some Republican senators began to tread more carefully. Senator Josh Hawley, in an interview with Newsmax, said, "Look, I don't always agree with Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez, but if she's sitting on legitimate documentation of misuse of federal disaster funds, then that's something that needs to be investigated, not litigated." That Sunday evening, President Donald Trump held a rally in Florida. During his speech, he took a few swings at AOC. She's a puppet of the radical left, crying on TV with her little binder of lies. But John Kennedy? He's a man of honor. He's gonna win that case and expose her for what she is. But even Trump's words seemed less effective than usual. For once, AOC wasn't backing down, and now she had what she claimed was proof. By Monday morning, late-night comedy shows, political roundtables, and even foreign press were covering the showdown. The story had moved beyond politics. It had become a test of truth versus power and who could wield the courts better. And then came a new twist. AOC's legal team submitted a motion to dismiss the lawsuit on the grounds that the senator was a public figure and her statements were protected political speech under the First Amendment, especially if they were based on factual findings. Legal experts were split. Some said it was a brilliant defense. Others warned that if the judge ruled against her, the case could snowball into a full-blown courtroom war. Senator Kennedy, meanwhile, doubled down. In a fiery press conference, he said, "Ms. Ocasio-Cortez may think she can come for me with her fancy binders and grandstanding, but this is Louisiana, not La La Land. She'll learn the hard way that slander has consequences." The standoff had just begun. But public opinion was shifting, and both camps knew it. What no one expected, however, was what would happen next. An unexpected ally would enter the fray and shake everything up. 2 days after AOC's explosive interview on Face the Nation, the story took a turn that no one saw coming. A former FEMA deputy administrator, Martin Kellner, stepped forward in a 60 Minutes exclusive claiming he had first-hand knowledge of the very contracts AOC referenced. Kellner, a 62-year-old Republican who had served under both the Trump and Biden administrations, said bluntly, "Yes, I was there. I saw the recommendations coming from Senator Kennedy's office. Some of those vendors were not even registered for federal contract bidding. They were brought in through emergency loopholes. It wasn't illegal, but it was morally bankrupt. It was a bombshell." Kellner continued, providing documented timelines, internal emails, and call logs that corroborated much of what AOC had implied. He wasn't a political ally, he'd even voted for Trump twice. But his conscience, he claimed, had grown too heavy to stay silent. "I have nothing to gain here, but the American people deserve the truth. Disaster relief is for victims, not for friends and golf clubs." AOC's team immediately moved to subpoena Kellner as a witness in the ongoing legal battle. Within hours, Senator Kennedy's lawyers filed a motion to delay proceedings, claiming the new testimonies introduced undue bias into the civil trial. But it was too late. The court had already agreed to hear pretrial testimony from Kellner under oath. And then came the next twist. An unexpected ally for AOC emerged, someone no one would have ever predicted. Senator Rand Paul. Speaking from the Senate floor, Paul delivered a scathing critique of both Kennedy and the entire congressional culture of contract favoritism, stating, "We may disagree with AOC on policy, but on this matter, she's sounding the alarm on something that both parties are guilty of. This isn't about left or right. This is about right and wrong." Paul's remarks were played across news networks and social media with shock and awe. For a libertarian Republican like Paul to side, however tactfully, with a progressive icon like AOC was unheard of. But Paul wasn't the only one smelling blood in the water. A few moderate Republicans, previously silent, began distancing themselves from Kennedy. Internally, there were whispers in the GOP Senate caucus about damage control and how to keep the scandal from turning into a broader indictment of conservative ethics. Meanwhile, in New York, AOC was doubling down. Her legal team, led by civil rights attorney Monique Harlow, announced they would countersue Kennedy for malicious prosecution if the case advanced past pretrial. "This isn't about protecting reputation," Harlow said at a press conference. "This is about silencing a young woman of color who's exposing a very old system of corruption." That quote went viral. Activists across the country launched digital campaigns under the banner #TruthCosts80 million, satirizing the lawsuit as the price of honesty in American politics. Outside the court, however, tensions escalated. Protesters, both pro-Kennedy and pro-AOC, gathered daily. Fistfights broke out in D.C. bars. Cable news networks ran 24/7 panels. Late-night comedians made it their weekly theme. Even international news outlets like BBC and Al Jazeera picked it up. America was once again having one of its very public, very messy political earthquakes. Back in Louisiana, a local news outlet published a deeply researched exposé using Kellner's documents and additional whistleblower information. The article alleged that a company called Bayou Secure LLC, awarded a $26 million contract during hurricane relief, was co-owned by Kennedy's second cousin and longtime campaign donor. The optics were disastrous. Kennedy's team fired back hard, labeling the story politically motivated garbage. But even longtime supporters in Baton Rouge were starting to ask questions. Still, Kennedy did not waver. In a combative appearance on Tucker Carlson's online show, he said, "This is political jihad. AOC is using media mobs and socialist smoke to burn down my name. But I've fought tougher battles in my career and I don't plan on backing down now." The stakes were growing higher by the day. A trial was no longer avoidable. Both sides were digging in, gathering evidence, lining up witnesses. And in the middle of all of this chaos, the Trump administration, seemingly on the sidelines, began preparing for something even bigger, a special counsel review into misuse of disaster funds quietly ordered by President Trump himself. Was it to go after Kennedy? Or to investigate AOC's claims? Nobody knew. But it added fuel to a fire that was already spiraling into a full-blown political inferno. February 13, 2025, the United States District Court for the District of Columbia was packed to capacity. Press badges flashed, metal detectors beeped, and barricades lined the courthouse steps. It was the day everyone had been waiting for. The case: Senator John Kennedy versus Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Claim: defamation, $80 million in damages. Defense: First Amendment protections plus evidence of truth. OC arrived to chance of truth to power. Her legal team looked confident, even defiant. On the other side, Senator Kennedy walked in with a practiced calm, flanked by 5 attorneys and dozens of flashing cameras. At the heart of the trial, the 8 specific public statements AOC made about Kennedy's alleged disaster profiteering. Her team needed to prove that either 1, the statements were true, or 2, made without actual malice. The legal threshold for public figure defamation. Opening statements. Kennedy's lead attorney, Philip Durant, a seasoned D.C. Bulldog, addressed the jury first. "Ladies and gentlemen, my client is not on trial for corruption. This isn't a corruption trial, it's a truth trial. Did Representative Ocasio-Cortez knowingly and falsely damage a good man's name to boost her political profile? We say yes." Then came AOC's counsel, Monique Harlow, just as sharp, just as prepared. "This is not about one man's bruised ego. This is about the people's right to know who profits from their pain. The truth is not defamatory, especially when it's backed by documents, witnesses, and patterns." Day 2, the emails. The FEMA documents AOC had hinted at during her TV appearance were now Exhibit A. Internal emails between Kennedy's office and FEMA directors were presented. Lines like, "Make sure Bayou Secure gets priority. The senator's office prefers trusted partners." Kennedy's team fought to contextualize them, claiming trusted partners simply meant reliable vendors with previous experience. But the jury wasn't blind. The connections were too direct. Names listed in the emails matched those of major Kennedy donors, some with shell companies formed mere months before the hurricane struck. Day 4, the whistleblower testimony. Martin Kellner took the stand, swearing under oath that Kennedy's office applied extreme pressure on FEMA to award contracts without vetting. His cross-examination was brutal. Kennedy's attorneys tried to discredit him as a disgruntled bureaucrat seeking attention. But Kellner held firm. "I didn't come forward for politics. I came forward because I saw millions go into the wrong hands while families sat on rooftops waiting for food. The courtroom was silent. Even the judge looked visibly moved. Day 5, AOC's turn on the stand. When AOC took the witness stand, the room buzzed. Her voice was steady, resolute. I didn't wake up one day and decide to pick a fight with a sitting senator. But when I saw the data, the connections, the misuse, I had two options: stay quiet or speak up. And I chose the latter. Kennedy's lawyers pounced on her systemic corruption comment. Congresswoman, do you regret saying that? AOC didn't blink. I regret that there was systemic corruption for me to talk about in the first place. Mic drop. But the Kennedy team wasn't finished. On day 6, they submitted bank records showing that AOC's campaign raised $12 million in the 48 hours after her viral statements, arguing she was profiting off defamation. Harlow responded with fury. She raised money because people support truth-tellers, not because she made false claims. Are we now saying politicians can't speak if the public dares to support them? The wild card, the Trump factor. Just when the case seemed to tip in AOC's favor, President Donald Trump shocked the media by commenting during a press conference. This whole Kennedy AOC thing, it's messy. I've got my Justice Department looking into all of it. Corruption's bad. Defamation's bad. We'll get to the bottom of it. I like John, but let's see what the evidence says. This threw Kennedy's legal team into chaos. Privately, sources claimed Trump was furious at being dragged into what was becoming an optics disaster. His base was split. Some felt Kennedy was a victim of leftist lawfare, while others felt he was damaging Trump's message of cleaning the swamp. Back in court, the final week of the trial saw two more explosive revelations. A leaked memo from a Kennedy campaign consultant advising him to capitalize on the hurricane optics and ensure donor-aligned companies are visibly active in relief. A contractor's testimony admitting he donated $250,000 to Kennedy's PAC after being promised disaster logistics access. The jury gasped. The judge banged the gavel. Kennedy's face turned pale. In a last-ditch move, Kennedy's team filed a motion to settle quietly out of court. But AOC refused. No backroom deals. If you want a trial, you'll get one. If I lose for speaking the truth, then so be it. But I won't be silenced.